Hello trainers, Professor Palm here. I'm a Fossil Fanatic, and I love fossil Pokemon. In my opinion, fossil Pokemon are some of the coolest we have out there. Sadly, they went extinct millions of years ago, but we have the power to bring them back. And if you can, do it. I highly recommend that you add a fossil Pokemon to your team. They're extremely powerful, and why not add a little prehistoric power from the past? Ever since the day I restored an Anorith from a claw fossil, which eventually became Armaldo, my first fossil Pokemon, I've loved fossils. However, I think one thing that most trainers forget to think about is how important fossil Pokemon truly are. If you really think about it, they taught us so many skills that we use today. Since so many fossil Pokemon came from the waters, they taught us how to swim. There's also ones who taught us how to run and defend ourselves with the armored skin that also made us build ourselves armor as well as weapons. But I think one thing a lot of people forget is that so many Pokemon we have today are descendants of the Pokemon that existed in the Stone Age, all connected by millions of years of evolution. I think it's safe to say that most prehistoric Pokemon we know are from the water. As for the longest time, we did not have land-based prehistoric Pokemon until Gen 4, and now we have a lot more. But the rarest one we really seem to have is flying type. Despite the wide open skies of the ancient Stone Age days, Aerodactyl for the longest time was the only flying type ancient Pokemon we knew about. That wasn't until the Nacrene City Museum director, Lenora, introduced us to the plume fossil. And when she revived it, we got to meet the first ever bird Pokemon. I'm of course talking about Archen and Archeops. I love bird Pokemon, and I'm happy to say every bird Pokemon I've ever caught all started with these two. I guess you could say these two were the early birds when it came to the world of Pokemon. As a flying type expert and a bird lover, Archen and Archeops really put out a fine legacy. Considering where it all began for them in the Stone Age, being the first ever flying type Pokemon, looking at all the descendants they have of so many birds, it's really cool to think where the legacy began. However, every legacy does have a beginning, and ironically enough, despite both of them being birds and having the flying typing, Archen and Archeops are some of the worst flyers ever. Archen cannot even fly or even get airborne. All it can do is glide. And it takes Archeops forever till this Pokemon can fly, as it has to run very fast. You know how people say sometimes you have to walk before you run? I think that Archen and Archeops had to run before they fly. It's kind of crazy to think of how many descendants they have that fly when these two could barely do it. Even though Archen and Archeops are some of the worst at something that their descendants would all be amazing at, they were actually quite scary Pokemon back in the Stone Age. As I said before, both these Pokemon could run very fast, and Archeops was a monster when it came to hunting. This thing would hunt in flocks, and of course, they have some really powerful screeches that could shatter the eardrums of all of their foes. So yeah, these Pokemon may not have been good at one thing, but at another thing, they were the masters of it. Unfortunately though, these Pokemon had another problem. Both Archen and Archeops were very cowardly. While they looked very strong and unstoppable, underneath it all, they were kind of pessimistic Pokemon. Even though Archen and Archeops have a lot of problems, I think that's what makes them such a standout, as most other prehistoric Pokemon are seen as violent creatures that love to destroy. These ones, on the other hand, are cowards. It gives them some personality and also makes them very different from the others. Not to mention all those beautiful colors that they have that would eventually go to their descendants. I think that sometimes some Pokemon that have a lot of problems are the most interesting ones, and Archen and Archeops are no exception. The Stone Age was a very dangerous time, but thankfully Archen and Archeops were easily able to move very fast. And since these Pokemon were often on the move, they must have seen a lot of amazing things. While Archen had to explore while running on the ground, it was great that Archeops eventually could take off and fly in the beautiful skies of the Stone Age. I wonder what those times were like. Well, I think it's time that we ruffle some feathers and we watch as the feathers fly. Let's go back to the Stone Age and learn all about our ancient bird Pokemon. And let's do it with the first bird ever, Archen! Archen, the first bird Pokemon, is based on the dinosaur, the Archeops, believed by scientists to be the earliest of all birds. Its colorful feathers that Archen has also draws resemblance to macaws, specifically the scarlet macaw. Archen also draws inspiration from raptors with its speed and jumping. Back in the days of the Stone Age, Archen lived in places with lots of trees, like forests, the woods, and jungles, as these Pokemon felt safe within the treetops, and they also enjoyed climbing as well as jumping from the trees. Some studies suggest that Archen was the ancestor to all bird Pokemon. However, the truth is always changing, as some new research that's come to life contradicts this. There's been a lot of debate of whether Archen and Archeops, or Aerodactyl, is the true ancestor to the birds we have today. Many researchers, however, have shown that these Pokemon fought all the time in the Stone Age. While Archen appear aggressive at first, screaming, showing their claws, and gritting their teeth at their foe, it's all an act to look tough, as these Pokemon were known to be quite cowardly. If Archen ever felt threatened, they would quickly retreat to the trees, and they'd hide until they felt safe. While Archen has a pair of colorful wings and sports the flying typing, this Pokemon is unable to fly. Its wings and feathers, however, are great for gliding, as when Archen climbed to high places, it used its wings and feathers to help it easily glide from the highest heights. Due to being unable to fly, Archen instead moved by walking, running, and jumping. It's surprisingly great at jumping, as thanks to Archen's small frame, it can jump to great heights. Some even jumped as high as 10 feet. And due to their amazing legs, Archen was faster running on land than it was gliding with its wings. In prehistoric times, Archen lived in the treetops, where they jumped from branch to branch, eating berries and ancient bug Pokemon. Archen's claws also helped it climb trees, as these claws acted like little hooks that Archen could use to latch onto branches. The feather on Archen's tail acted like a wind radar, as it would alert Archen of what wind was coming and what kind. Some Archen used this to tell what weather was coming. If they sensed a massive storm, Archen would jump out of the trees and wait in the rocks until the storm passed. Since Archen used their sharp claws to climb up trees, they always left marks to alert others that they were there. Because these Pokemon lived in flocks and were quite small, many Archen teamed up and worked together to make big claw marks on trees to scare off predators to think something massive was in the area. Just like birds today, Archen has a very shrill and powerful cry. If there's nowhere for Archen to hide, it'll scream in a high-pitched cry. These cries of Archen are so powerful that they could shatter glass and will cause ear-splitting headaches to their foe. For the first ever bird Pokemon, Archen sure started an amazing legacy. Kind of funny how a Pokemon whose descendants can fly all came from a Pokemon who couldn't even get airborne. But now it's time that we take off. Let's evolve Archen into Archeops. Oh wow, Archeops can finally fly, so it's time to take flight and go soaring in the prehistoric skies. We're gonna go with Archeops into the highest heights. Archeops, the first bird Pokemon, is based on the dinosaur, the Archeops, believed by scientists to be the earliest of all birds. And with its colors, Archeops also draws inspiration from scarlet macaws. Archeops' shape also resembles microraptors, which were noticeably dinosaurs that had feathers on their legs. Archeops also draws inspiration from feathered serpents of ancient Mesoamerican mythologies, as well as European dragons. In the prehistoric times, Archeops were known to live in the treetops, as they liked places close to the sky, so they lived in jungles, forests, and woods. However, they would also be found living in mountains, as these places served as landing strips for them when they came out of the sky. Unlike its previous evolution, Archen, Archeops were able to fly. However, getting into the sky took some time, as the only way Archeops could fly is by running very fast, as it had to reach speeds up to 25 miles per hour before this Pokemon could even get airborne. Ironically, Archeops was a bit of an airplane when it came to taking off. And because it needed a runway to fly, Archeops was apparently better at hunting on the ground than in the sky. In fact, most prey it caught was on the ground due to its great speed on land. Because it can move so fast, it could give chase and always capture anything it hunted very quickly. They had some pretty powerful legs, as Archeops could really kick things far and could jump as high as 15 feet in the sky. Sometimes it used this jump and the wind to its advantage, as Archeops would use this to become airborne, as it was a shortcut to taking flight faster than running. Also, with their feathers and wings, Archeops could glide, just like with their previous evolution. Due to being omnivorous, Archeops enjoyed eating berries, but they also enjoyed hunting in flocks. Whenever they went after a Pokemon on the move, Archeops would do a strategical thing. One Archeops would have the prey cornered, and the other one would take the prey into the sky, before dropping it to its doom where the flock ate its remains. Archeops were quite intelligent Pokemon, as they made up strategies whenever it came to fighting their enemies. And because they could fly, Aerodactyl was known to be their main rival in the sky in the prehistoric days. Whenever Archeops and Aerodactyl fought, these battles ended with the loser ending up the other's meal. These Pokemon have some powerful claws that can easily slice and dice through everything. Even solid rocks will have the mark of Archeops on them. They use their nails to help them climb high mountains. While Archeops could fly, sometimes they liked climbing up, as this gave them more muscles in their arms to help them fly better. Archeops' true power came from its vocal cords. When Archeops screeched, it gave off horrible shrill cries that made even the bravest of Pokemon retreat in fear. Archeops used these terrible shrieks to keep all sorts of predators and others out of their territory. One of Archeops' most beautiful features to it is its colorful plumage. This ancient Pokemon's plumage is so delicate that only experienced professionals should be allowed to groom it. Because if anyone else tries to, this could ruin the plumage forever, making it very hard for Archeops to ever fly again. Fossil Pokemon always start something that we have in the modern day, and Archen and Archeops are no exception, as because of them, we have so many amazing bird Pokemon. And for the first ever bird Pokemon, they made a dramatic step, because they introduced the idea of flying from place to place. This not only started Pokemon that can fly you places, but also an entire trainer class. These first ever bird Pokemon have been around for quite a while, and there are some really cool things to talk on. So here are some fun facts and tidbits about our ancient flyers of the Stone Age, Archen and Archeops. At just the height of 1'8" and the weight of 20.9 pounds, Archen is currently the shortest and lightest fossil Pokemon. When it comes to stats, Archeops has the highest base stat attack of all non-legendary and all non-mega evolved flying type Pokemon, as it has a total of 140. Also, Archeops has a base stat total of 567, making it the only Pokemon whose base stat total matches its number on the National Pokedex. And it's also the only Pokemon with this base stat total. In the Pokemon trading card game, while Archen and Archeops are often portrayed as fighting type due to it being the rock type in the game, in the Silver Tempest expansion for Sword and Shield, Archen and Archeops were instead given the normal type for an unknown reason. Despite several Pokedex entries saying that Archen can hop and jump very high, Archen cannot learn the move Bounce through level up. However, it can learn the move Bounce through tutoring. Archeops' original cry in the Gen 5 games is very similar to Yveltal's cry in the original Gen 6 games. Listen to them back to back and you'll hear how similar they are. All Pokemon have a special quirk to them that they can do in or out of battle that we call an ability. For Archen and Archeops, they have a signature ability, Defeatist, which is a pretty bad ability. If either Archeops or Archen's HP becomes half or less, their attack and special attack stat also halves. That's pretty bad considering that they both have attack as their highest stat. You may think that the item the ability patch can help, as you'll unlock a hidden ability. Unfortunately, you'd be wrong, as Archen and Archeops have no hidden ability, and are also the only fossil Pokemon without hidden abilities. In Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon, Archen is a member of the Expedition Society, and despite its inability to fly, it strangely serves as the aerial explorer of the group. In the Pokemon Sword and Shield Crown Tundra DLC, both Archeops and Crobat are the only non-starter and non-legendary Pokemon that cannot be obtained unless through evolution. Not only do Aerodactyl, Archen, and Archeops all have names that start with the letter A and have the same typings, but they're also the only fossil Pokemon to have wings. And despite all three of them not being dragon types, all three of them can learn dragon type moves through either level up or by TM. The prehistoric skies must have been very nice for Archen and Archeops to glide and fly in. However, the Stone Age was also a scary time, as it was either fight or be eaten. Thankfully, they both had wings and could go high places. And, for a time, both Archen and Archeops were apex predators, especially with their typing of rock and flying. They were amazing ancient flyers that could wing up on their enemies. But almost all Pokemon have weaknesses, and both our first ever bird Pokemon's flight will turn into a free fall when they're hit by super effective moves that are Water type, Rock type, Steel type, Electric type, and Ice type. Whoa, 5 weaknesses in total for Archeops and Archen. With that many weaknesses, I think it's easy to see how our first ever bird Pokemon went extinct. However, back in the Stone Age, with the power of flight and jumping, Archen and Archeops were seen as some of the fastest Pokemon of the Stone Age. And also, with their typing of rock and flying, they won a lot of battles in the sky, and they still can today, especially when they get great stab against Pokemon with super effective moves that hurt Flying type, Grass type, Fire type, Ice type, Bug type, and Fighting type. Wow, 6 strengths when it comes to our ancient birds in battle. Talk about a wing up when it comes to fighting in the sky. Because of that great power of jumping and flying, I guess you could say no one touches Archeops and Archen in the sky. Oh, and since Archen can jump and hop really high, and Archeops can fly in the sky, with their flying typing, these ancient Stone Age birds are completely immune to moves that are ground type. The world may have shifted a lot in the Stone Age, and it still may have shifted when it broke apart from Pangea, but it will never affect Archen and Archeops. Guess you could say, compared to so many other dinosaur Pokemon, these two were untouchable. For the first ever bird Pokemon, Archen and Archeops really started a powerful legacy, as without them, we would not have any bird Pokemon. And considering how many regions use bird Pokemon to fly from place to place as transportation across the region, transportation would look very different if we didn't have a way to fly. Though, it's quite ironic that for the first ever bird Pokemon, Archen and Archeops were some of the worst Pokemon when it came to flying, as only one could glide and one of them had to run and jump, and it only got lucky if it became airborne. Then again, every legend has a legacy and a beginning somewhere. Sometimes things start off rough with turbulence before there's a calmness in the sky. And since these Pokemon were faster on land than in the sky, you could say that Archeops and Archen ran so all of their descendants could fly. Prehistoric days sure were scary, as it was a savage time of survival of the fittest, with only 2 options for all the Pokemon, either fight or get eaten. So, I guess in those days, Archen and Archeops were the ones that had to fake it till they made it, because of their defeatist ability. While they could put on a show and make themselves look scary and intimidating to their foes because of their wings and fangs, these Pokemon were major cowards when it came to fighting their own battles. But that's also what makes them interesting, as it's not often that we see Pokemon with such a pessimistic outlook when it comes to getting hurt and fighting. Because of this attitude, Archen and Archeops had an idea that there was only one winner in a fight, and if they weren't going to win, they were going to throw the fight and lose. I guess because of believing this is one of the main factors that caused Archeops and Archen to go extinct. Considering how many prehistoric Pokemon we have that lived in the waters and roamed the lands, it's great to see that we had Archen and Archeops being more Pokemon who soared in the skies of the Stone Age with Aerodactyl. As a lover of flying types, we really needed more ancient flying Pokemon, and I'm glad that we discovered the plume fossil and learned all about the ancestors of birds, Archen and Archeops. Sure, they had a lot of hard times taking their first flight with a bunch of turbulence when flying or gliding, But those flights they started were only the beginning, and in time, practice makes perfect. Whether Archen and Archeops run fast on the land, climb up trees, or glide in the skies using their claws or their wings, they're the birds that started it all. And on a cool note, all birds we have took a trait from their ancestors of the past. They always say the early bird gets the worm, but in this case of Archen and Archeops, these Pokemon are the ancient early birds. Welcome back, trainers! Did you enjoy learning about the first ever bird Pokemon from the Stone Age? I hope that if you went flying with them, it wasn't too bad with it, even though Archeops does encounter a lot of turbulence. Eventually it'll get the calmness. It's crazy to think how far the evolution of flying has come. At first it was bad, and now we have smooth sailing, especially with the flying taxis we have. Well, we're at the end of the video, but before we end this, I just have a few questions for you. Considering the fact that we've only had 3 fossil Pokemon that are flying type, do you think that we need more flying type fossil Pokemon and ones that are more Pteranodon or Pterodactyl based? When it comes to fossil Pokemon, there are so many that you can revive. Who was the first one that you ever did to, and what was the first fossil Pokemon you had on your team? If we got another fossil Pokemon line for the next generation, since we've been due for one for a while, what do you think it should be based on? What kind of dinosaur, or what kind of creature from the Stone Age? And of course, Archen and Archeops have one of the worst abilities ever, defeatist. When it comes to bad Pokemon abilities, what do you think is one of the worst? I hope that you enjoyed learning all about our ancient birds, Archen and Archeops. They sure are a cool duo. Unfortunately, this will be my last video of September 2025, as I'm getting a head start on the spooky season. And for the occasion, I got myself the booster bundle of Trick or Trade. I hope that you tune in October, as I'll be opening a Trick or Trade pack every night of October. So I hope that that's exciting. But if you liked what you saw, please leave a like. If you have any questions, want to answer any of the questions that I threw at you, you have an idea that you want turned into a video, or there's a certain thing in the Pokemon card events that you want me to talk about, then please comment. And as always, if you like what you saw and you want to see more, smash the subscribe button. As a Pokemon professor, it's my job to teach trainers like all of you. Please share my videos to as many as you can. Take care, trainers. Until then, Palm out!